Hello, everybody. Happy Tuesday afternoon. It is a Tuesday afternoon, and welcome to this special, I guess we'll call it a mini 5-on-3, a mini pod. Not sure.
Maybe 5-on-3 for sure.
It's a mini 5-on-3, yeah. A mini 5-on-3 / Rangers check-in / joint beat report between the one, the only Lou Orlando and myself, Samantha Bohrer. We are here, as I said, to discuss the one and only Broadway Blue Shirts because recently they've been pretty up and down, Lou, and we've seen some interesting games out of this team.
Yeah, it's been... Right, we're coming off of an interesting win in its own right against the St. Louis Blues, but before that it had been a really rough stretch of hockey. You had back-to-back losses against teams that I think going into the season, when you looked at this part of the schedule, you said, you should beat the Blackhawks, you should beat the Senators twice. I know Ottawa has some talent, and they might not. They're better than I think their record is. But the way they've been playing, I think the big thing that stands out to me is the story at the beginning of the season was they were playing good and they were getting unlucky. And now the season is the story is they're just playing lifeless. There's not a ton of energy. Things aren't working. You feel like the clubhouse is pressing. They're looking for answers, and they're not finding anything.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that we were talking before we started this here recording about Gerard Gallant switching up the lines and trying to make changes and just trying to incite a spark in this team in the post-game presser against Ottawa in their second game that they played against, obviously the one at MSG. When they were talking after that loss, he was like, there was no life in anyone in this team during this game. And I have to agree, it felt lifeless. It felt boring almost. And I hate to say that, like, this is hockey in New York. It shouldn't be that, but it was just, there was nothing going on that ice. And I was like, how is this possible? How do we not have this energy that it's the New York Rangers? Come on.
And that's what stands out during this stretch. And you really saw it, I think, when they played the Devils. The Devils are the team that the Rangers want to be, and
totally,
that's
which is a
not
surprise.
Me saying that. That's Gerard Gallant saying that, right? That's something that he essentially said in the pregame pressers. The Devils play the way we want to play, and when you look at the way that their youth plays and how fast that they play, you start to think about, man, we should be able to play like that, and the Rangers have at times, and a lot of the frustration I think boils from the fact that you look at the other teams like the Devils, who, yes, they had to go through some painful growing years, but they're reaping the benefits of having kids like Jack Hughes take those leaps, and you're still looking inwards at your own kids, so to speak, right? The Lafrenières, the Kakos, the Hedels of the world, and you're not seeing that leap. I think they get criticized unfairly. I think they're the product of a situation where this is a win-now team.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the coaches, even before Gallant, right, where it was prioritizing winning and not necessarily giving the minutes to Lafreniere and Kakko when they probably deserved it more for their development. But when you look at the line changes that they made against St. Louis, I think it's huge for the future of this team in the next couple of weeks. They bumped up Lafreniere and Kakko to the first line, playing with Zibanejad, and it seems like the echo across the locker room was that made them better, getting to play with Zibanejad. That's a top-line center.
Yeah, absolutely. It inspires the youth.
It makes them better, and the kids were flying in the third period, and Lafreniere gets a goal. Kakko was so close.
Yeah.
And even I think when Hedel gets back, I know he's day-to-day, and I think he could be back by the Vegas game.
Yeah, that's what they're saying.
You can slide him back on the second line with Panarin, and all of a sudden you have the kids in your top two lines, and that would be huge because I think they've earned it. It's not at a point where you're giving charity minutes to them.
No.
They've earned this.
They've earned it, and like it's also not pointless. It's not. We're still, obviously they're struggling right now, but we're not at the point in the season yet where it's like, well, we have nothing to win for. Let's just throw people out on the ice and see what happens. No, nor is it charity minutes. It's people who can contribute. I don't remember if it was, I think it was Mika after the last game. He even had a quote that Molly Walker reported where he was like, Kakko's got it next game. He was like, he had a funny line where he was like, it's going to even go in off his butt or something like that, where he was like, this is happening next game. You have these young contributors who are trying, who are getting these opportunities. But like you said, they're not doing what the Devils are doing. And you said that Gallant even was like, they are who we should be. Those were words that came right out of his mouth. It's not like the Rangers are this old, dying team. Like, it's not even like the Islanders, I think, are one of the oldest teams in the NHL. It's not like the Rangers are the Islanders. I mean, the average age is 27.2 years old. This isn't exactly an ancient team. It's not maybe the most youthful, not ancient. There should be more energy. And like, something I do want to touch on though is Jacob Trouba has been getting a lot of hate recently. as the captain is whatever. Personally, I am anti-Jacob Trouba hate. Second of all, I think he has been one of the players who has been trying really hard to incite some energy in this team, to create some excitement, to create something fun there. I mean, whether it was with his fight with Kachuk in the Senators game the other day, he had moments in the Blues game where he's being really physical. He's trying, and I think that this team, I don't know exactly what's missing, and I don't know, maybe you have more thoughts after the St. Louis game because you said those line changes worked. I obviously didn't see those in the Ottawa game in the same way, but I think he's trying to draw something out of this squad that maybe they don't have in the tank right now, which is surprising.
I'll say this first and foremost. You can make criticisms about Trouba's game, particularly this season. I think you'd be somewhat valid, but the one thing you really can't criticize, I think, is his ability as a leader. I think we've both talked about this. He's been excellent in the locker room. I think he's the captain that I think Kreider is also an excellent leader. I know a lot of the fans want Kreider to be the captain, but so much of what Trouba does is perfect for a hockey captain. He's physical. He's a leader. He's going to go out there. This is now back-to-back games where he's gotten into a fight. I know the Chicago game, he yells at the bench, right, and they lose that game, but he gets into a fight in St. Louis as well, and he's been a very vocal leader on the ice, and he's been not quiet in the locker room, but he's very calm. It's almost two different personas, so I think his leadership can't be questioned. His play can, to a certain degree.
Sure,
I think
everyone's
he's playing injured.
I agree.
That's something we know. But I will say this. So the game against St. Louis, I thought, was one of Trouba's better games. And you look at the way that the Trouba and Miller pairing, which is a line in general that I think has drawn a lot of ire from fans, because I don't think that Keandre Miller has taken the step that a lot of people thought he was going to, based on he was so exceptional in the playoffs last year that I think a lot of people thought this is going to be one of our top defensemen, and that necessarily hasn't been the case. And Trouba, I think, is also disappointed. The second D line led the team in plus-minus with +3 last night. So, I mean, I know that plus-minus can kind of be fluky sometimes, but I thought that Miller had one of his best games of the season. I thought Trouba played better than what we've seen from him. I think he's still got room to improve, but I thought Trouba played a very sound game defensively. And the Rangers, in general, have struggled defensively. I know that was an issue last year as well in the first half, but even like the people online that are saying this looks like the first half, it looks worse than the first half.
Yeah.
A lot of the stretches. I think you saw a lot better things from the first half last year than you are this year. There's a lot of reason to be concerned about the Rangers, even after this win. Igor Shesterkin isn't getting a lot of help, and he's also not playing. I know we expected a drop-off, but it might be even more of a drop-off than we did expect. So
yeah, I agree.
It's crazy to sit here and think about, and I think we even talked about this on 5-on-3, that if you're talking about New York teams in playoffs, right now the Rangers are the biggest team in question of missing the playoffs.
Yeah, which is surprising. And I mean, I know that this is not an episode about all three teams, so I don't want to get too far into that, but it is surprising how we came into this year and I talked about this last week on 5-on-3, almost everyone on my Twitter feed was like, the Rangers are in the Stanley Cup final, the Rangers are in the Stanley Cup final. And now it's a question of if they're even going to get a wild card spot, which I think is surprising. And I think, like you said, a lot of it does come down to defense. When I'm sitting at these games watching this team, it is turnover after turnover, first of all. It is miss pass after miss pass. And it is this, I don't know if it's that they don't want to draw a bunch of penalties. I don't know what it is there, but I feel like I'm not watching this team be as down and dirty as other teams are, get in as deep as they need to, whether it's in front of the net, wherever. And I know that they have some people who are getting penalty minute after penalty minute. Like, don't get me wrong there. But I'm not watching a team that is playing this incredible defensive game, and they have incredible offensive defensemen, which I don't think that they're necessarily lacking there. Like, Adam Fox is Adam Fox. But it is the defense. I watch so many missed passes and so many turnovers, and I'm just like, what is missing in this team? Why is it that every team that I watch, and every night I sit there and I go, maybe it's just tonight, they came back from a road trip or it's an afternoon game. These are all weird things. But then when it's a back-to-back at home, there's no travel involved. You've had a couple days off before you've been here, and I'm still watching pass after pass be missed. I'm still watching play after play go awry. I'm like, where is this coming from? And I don't want to just dog on them, but it's interesting to watch this slide, quote unquote, I suppose, right now.
It is a slide, right? I mean, I think we have to be critical. In fairness, we have to be
Yeah.
critical. When the Rangers are good, we're going to give them their credit. And when they play bad, I think we have to be critical. It's our job. And defensively, the turnovers that we've seen from the Rangers and just shoddy positioning and not getting back, allowing rushes. Even in the game against St. Louis, there are so many, even though they win that game, there are so many plays where they had a few chances on big power plays to clear the puck and they just can't. And then right out of the second period, right, Rangers have a lead. We're lucky to have a lead, I thought, against St. Louis. And the first 12 seconds, St. Louis gets a goal, and it's because Mika Zibanejad right behind the net just gives it to Tarasenko in the slot, and it's an easy goal, right? So I think there are still so many issues in terms of puck control and getting back and limiting rushes. I will say that I think the defense does also get hurt by when the offense isn't effective.
Yeah.
Right, look at the third period of the St. Louis game where the offensive pressure turns on. You don't even notice that the Rangers aren't playing great defense because the Rangers have the puck in the ozone the entire time.
Sure.
So obviously everything goes hand in hand. When you get good defense, that translates to more offensive opportunities. And likewise, when you turn on the offensive pressure, it's easier for your defense. So I think it's a systemic team. Obviously, I think that the defense really is an issue that's going to have to get cleaned up. Gallant's been harping on it for 2 years now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember Trouba mentioning in the locker room a while ago about that, saying we've been spending so much time in practice focusing on defense. And so I think it is about finding that balance, though, between keeping your offense so aggressive and then remaining strong and physical defensively as well. Because I want to watch this team play a full 60 minutes. I want to watch them play a complete game. And right now I'm not seeing that. I'm either seeing them start off flying out of the gate in the first and second periods, incredibly possessive, like really fighting their way into the other team's zone, being this aggressive Rangers squad that we know and love, maybe with not the strongest defense, but at least creating those offensive opportunities for each other. Or I'm watching them come out in the first and second periods really slow, and then somehow between the second and third period, finding a way to pick it up. And I'm like, I want to watch a consistent 60 where this team is from start to finish. Obviously, you're going to have moments in every game, but from start to finish is playing as fully as they can in both areas. Because right now it's like it's one or the other, and either they start out with all the energy and then lose it, or they start out with no energy and then somehow find it in the third, and that's not sustainable.
And this is why it's a good time it's a good thing we're doing this right now, because I think you can point to recent games and see examples of both. Obviously, the St. Louis game is an example of, I think, one decent period followed by one really bad period, and then they turn it on the third period. And then the back-to-back of Edmonton and New Jersey a little bit earlier was the perfect example of, hey, great start, and then things fall apart in the third period, or second and the third period. And obviously you were at that Edmonton game. I was at the New Jersey game. I think that when they start off slow, you can at least see what they try and do to fix it, right, which is line changes and try and mix things up, try and spark the team somehow, and I think that has worked. I'm more concerned about how do you combat the hot start to just completely falling apart, because I think that's a much more difficult thing to fix than vice versa.
I absolutely agree, because you can find a way to energize a team. You know, you can get into a fight, you can have an odd man rush, you can do whatever to energize. But yeah, starting hot and then falling off. It's like, okay, what do you do to keep the energy, keep the momentum? Especially now, I want to look forward a little bit. We were talking about their games coming up. They don't have a very easy schedule coming up for the next few games. They play the Knights tomorrow, the Golden Knights tomorrow. They play the Avalanche after that. They play the Devils after that, the Maple Leafs after that, and then the Flyers, and then Blackhawks and Penguins again. So that's a pretty nasty next 6-7 games, especially looking at the Knights being 4th in the NHL, Avalanche being 9th, the Devils obviously being 2nd in the NHL right now, a rematch from the prior games they've had. I mean, these are teams who are known to be fast, who are known to be aggressive. We were just talking about the Devils. We talked about it a lot with the Avalanche last year, just how fast they are. And obviously now they're plagued by injury, so it's a different team than we saw. But still, I mean, when you're looking at these matchups, what is going to be the key? What would you say you really need out of this Rangers team to come out with a win in at least a couple of these games that are upcoming?
I think first and foremost, you need to see the offensive aggressiveness you saw in the third period against St. Louis. The sentiment in the locker room yesterday was that they believe that they can translate what they did in the third period into that big stretch. And it's no small thing that they got this win against St. Louis prior to that stretch, because I think even a sloppy win or an ugly win does a lot for the morale of the clubhouse. This is a locker room that's been pressing, and the unfair thing about hockey and a lot of sports is that the harder you try, sometimes the worse you play.
Yeah.
And so I think that this team just needed a win to get their minds reset, because this is a really tough stretch. You could play good hockey and lose all 4 of these games.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing they did against St. Louis that they haven't really been doing is they started to just play really tough offensive hockey, just throwing pucks to the net, getting to the net, trying to get deflections. We saw a lot of that I don't think we've seen a lot of during this last stretch. So I think it's huge to come out fast against Vegas, come out strong. I think that the defensive issues are something that's going to be a more long-term fix, but this team has the offensive talent that they shouldn't look lifeless on offense. So I think if they get into an offensive battle with these teams and they end up losing a couple 4-3, you're not going to love it, but I think you'll take it if this team plays faster and closer to what we saw at least at the beginning of the season.
I agree. I think that something that we're also not seeing as much that we did at the beginning of the season is more of these, 2-3 wins, these 4-3 wins, these 2-1 wins, as opposed to now where it's 6-4, it's 5-2, it's all of those, whether they're winning or losing in these games. I mean, I'm listing scores for both here. There's this larger margin, and I mean, even Gallant said the other night in the Senators game, he's like, this is a different game than the past ones we've lost here, where it was a pretty even match until it wasn't. And I think that that's going to be the key here is, keeping that offensive energy and keeping it to be an even match, not letting the energy trail off. And then also we were talking about Igor. We mentioned him briefly earlier. He obviously, like you said, we expected a drop off. Maybe it's been more than we thought it would. But then that's on the defense, to then get in front of him and to say, okay, we've got your back. You don't have to be Superman. You don't have to have this insane award-winning season you did last year just to keep us in the playoff contention, because we have you. And I would say they have the talent there too. Yes, it's a more long-term issue, but they have the ability to at least resolve this over the next few weeks, we'll say, month. And if they can focus on it. And so I don't think that it has to be an end-all, be-all thing, but it is something that they really need to get into now.
I mean, if we're being realistic, right, do we think that they're getting outside help defensively this season? If they make a trade, which is still an if because of the cap space troubles, right? We keep hearing Patrick Kane, or we think they might try and find a forward. We don't even know if that's plausible, but there's a chance that there's not outside help coming defensively, right? So this could be the team come playoffs, right?
Yeah.
And I think that you should definitely have confidence based on resume and talent, at least in your top 2 defensive lines, and I think the third line's kind of up for debate. With they're sticking with Hayek right now, and I think Schneider's actually been playing pretty good offensively. You need to see a step defensively, but I think the talent's there. The thing about Igor, it's really tough. I think he does look worse. Steve Valiquette has been talking on MSG about how his positioning, he's coming out of position more. He's playing. I think he's another guy. He's trying to do too much. He's trying to play aggressive, and he ends up coming out of position. But he needs help for the defense. You see that all over social media. But you need help in front of you as a goalie. You could do a lot as a goalie and still get, if your defense isn't going to do anything in front of you, doesn't matter.
You're kind of right out of luck, which is a pain. But I mean, you know what? They do have the opportunity to turn this around, and winning these next few games would mean huge things. Like you said, even if it's an overtime win, even if it's not a pretty win, it's still a win. A win is a win. And at this point, this team, this locker room could really use it. I mean, I wish I'd been there for the St. Louis game, because after the Ottawa game, it was very sad in that locker room. It was quite dismal. No one had a good thing to say about themselves or about the team, which was, I don't want to say about the whole team. Obviously, they weren't just hating on each other, but everyone was like, we need to be better. They were self-critical. I want good things for this team. I think they can do it. And winning against the Golden Knights, winning against the reigning Stanley Cup champs, winning against the Devils, the Maple Leafs, I think would do huge things for this team in morale, and also would show them what works, which is going to be key for the rest of the season.
Yeah, the winning in St. Louis, I describe it as it's like a sigh of relief. Sure. That's what it really felt like in the locker room. The thing I'm looking for, and we talked a little bit about it off air, and even a little bit in the beginning, line changes.
Mm-hmm.
If they stick with that, is that something you like? Do you like seeing Kakko and Lafreniere on the first line, and maybe the idea of Hedl on the second line? That would probably mean Kreider's on the third line.
Yeah.
So you're getting Kreider on the third line, Trocheck on the third line. It's something that they've experimented with during games, but we haven't really seen them stick with it consistently. Mm-hmm. So, as much as you do like to get the kids playing time, I'm interested to hear your thoughts on Kreider playing on the third line, Trocheck playing on the third line.
I don't know. I think it would be interesting. I think it's. I don't like. I wish I had like a better answer for that, because I'm thinking of that. I'm like, I don't know, like long term, what that would even really do, like, or what it would look like in the long term, how it would feel, because Chris Kreider obviously is such a leader for this team and is such a high caliber player here. And to put him on the third line, I mean, yes, it gives you more depth there, and it does give you then the ability to say, okay, it's not just the third line kind of resting back. Like, you have these people, you have Trocheck, which, I mean, people feel however they feel about him, but then it is, okay, you have the kids on the first and second line. And what's interesting is I was looking back at some articles from like what earlier in the season, like September, and it's people saying get rid of the kid lines. People saying it's done now. Yeah, it did well in the playoffs. It's not doing well anymore. And now it's interesting. People are saying put it back.
Well, funny, the kids even said that the kid line felt different this year. There's not the same spark that it was in the playoffs. And part of that is Hedo's been hurt on and off, so he hasn't gotten the consistent playing time. I thought Kakko and Lafreniere have each had stretches where they looked good and then they've kind of fallen off. I think they're at a spot, at least right now, at this point in the season, where they need to be on the line with someone that, like a Zibanejad. Maybe like a Panarin as well, but I think Zibanejad's probably the best fit for if you're going to keep Kakko and Lafreniere together. That's a veteran leader, one of the elite centers in the game, and they even said they feel a freedom playing with him and they can just go to the net, and you even see Lafreniere get a tip in there. I think that Chytil works very well with Panarin, and one of the criticisms that you can make about Chris Kreider is that he disappears. He's a streaky player.
He is.
So
that's true.
I think to put him on the third line, the way he's been playing, where I feel like I haven't noticed him too much on the first line, and so I don't think it's terrible to throw him down the third line. That gives your third line a boost, especially if Trocheck's there too. I think Trocheck is playing some very good hockey. He's hit a ton of posts. And so it feels like he's close, right? Him and Kakko have hit an insane amount of posts.
So many.
You feel like they're close. And then also, right, Kreider's going to get all that time on the power plays. He's going to get time on the penalty kill. So he gets a penalty kill goal, but this team gets a lot of power plays. So he's going to be with Mika and Brett on the power play. So it's not like he's not going to get minutes with those top guys. And I don't think that this is a permanent move necessarily. I think the Rangers probably are at their best when Mika and Kreider are together.
Mm-hmm.
But the
the
way this team's been playing, it's not like Mika and Kreider have been saving you in every single game. So it worked against St. Louis, and it worked dramatically. So I think at least you stick with it for a couple of games and see where it gets you.
I absolutely agree. I mean, I think that if at this point for this team, it's still early enough in the season where you can be trying things out in this way that are a little bit, quote unquote, risky. I mean, not risky, but, like a little bit up in the air as to how it's going to look long term. And it's not the point where nothing matters, but it's not the point where we are right before playoff contention and we need to figure this out right now. So I think it does give you a little bit of leeway. And you know what? At this point for this team, if it's working, find out. Like, mess around and find out, because you don't have that much to lose in terms of the way you've been playing recently, in terms of the way the scores have been reflecting, being on not winning a game at home since November 13th prior to that game versus St. Louis the other night. You don't have all that much. And I mean, when you look at, like you said, plus minus doesn't mean everything, but Kreider's +6, Trocheck is -9 right now. Kreider with 23 points, Trocheck with 17. So, I mean, I would be interested to see how it would feel moving them long term. I do feel that Trocheck is close. I really feel Kakko is close, like you were saying. I think that there's just like, if this team can fix like one or two little things, I think they'll be so much better off than they are right now.
One last thing about the lines. I could see Trocheck as a permanent fixture on the third line. I think we'll see Kreider get back to the first line at some point.
Yeah.
But, I mean, right, it's one of those weird things where you wouldn't be able to tell looking at social media, but there's still a lot of time left. There's 55 games, but you also have to move with a sense of urgency. So I think it's there's a little bit of freedom in the sense that you could mess around a little bit because it's not the end all be all, but you want to get something sparked right now so that you could set yourself up to go on a run second half of the season.
Absolutely. You don't want to end up, 10 games before the end of the season saying it is a race to the finish. We need all the manpower we can get, because then, you head into playoffs exhausted. You head into there like you don't necessarily want to have another playoff like you did last year where you're going to game 7 every round. You don't want to have to be, not that you want to coast to the end, because obviously that's not good, but it does allow you some leeway if you set yourself up for success in January and wherever. And then by the time playoffs come, you're not fighting for that number 2 wild card spot still.
I mean, look at the leeway New Jersey has because they've done off this great start. They can go on a slide and they'll be okay because of what they've done. So Rangers need to put themselves in a position to go on a run. They haven't really done that yet this season. Do whatever. They need to find something that works. And the line combinations to this point haven't worked. So to see something that even worked that well for a period, you feel like, why not? Let's try it out.
Why not? Let's try it out. Absolutely. Like I said, they will have a number of games to find out soon. They play Vegas tomorrow. So we will see how that turns out and what those line combinations will look like. I know Gallant doesn't always like to give a lot away before those games, but I will be very interested to see what happens when puck drops tomorrow. And that will just about do it for us here for this little mini pod Rangers recap episode with Lou and Samantha Bohrer. I hope everyone has a fantastic rest of your day. Watch some hockey. Lots of hockey to be watched at this point in the year. Happy Tuesday, everybody. This has been a production of WFUV Sports.